Hello guys, it's Ricecup with this year's Leagues build video guide covering fun and strong builds. This year has so many different builds compared to any other league. Before I cover some of the builds though, it is really important that I cover some of the basics about this league that is important to understanding the builds, such as the relics, the echo items, the combat masteries, the demonic pacts. If you are already familiar with all those things, then you can just skip this part and just jump straight to the builds. But anyways, for those of you that don't know, the starting area for this league is different. It will be at Volamore, the newest region, a super strong content region versus the usual low-level Lumbridge start at Mistalin. For example, you have the Gemcraft for early training. You have Perilous Moons at mid-level for really strong gear to take you to endgame and also tackle echo bosses with. You also get early training methods for various skills like the Sulfur Naguas, additionally for combat, Calcified Rocks for mining and prayer, Wealthy Citizens for thieving and money, and plenty of other methods. Also, link in the description of this video will have some really useful Leagues resources. We're going to cover the relics first, so here is tier 1. So the first relic is Endless Harvest. This is the most AFK skilling relic of all time in this league. It lets you AFK woodcutting, fishing, mining, and it banks those resources. And effectively, you can just keep AFK until you log out. So it's for people that love to AFK or they're just super busy and they can't really pay attention to the game. Next is Barbarian Gathering. It trains the same things like woodcutting, fishing, mining, also a little bit of agility and strength. And it also acts as crystal tool, so it's a bit faster, more efficient than Endless Harvest, but it's not auto bank. It has a storage though, so you can do a little bit of AFK in between. Good for people that are trying to be a bit more efficient and can play a lot. And the last one is Abundance. This one gives you 10 level boosts on every non-combat skill and also passive XP and GP while you're training. This is good for people that are speed running for league points early on and they don't really care about like long-term gameplay, because the other two relics will be a lot better as you progress. So next we have tier 2 more skilling relics. So Hot Food is the one that auto trains agility. It also allows you to cook fish that you fish and also smith ores that you mine. So it's synergized with the Endless Harvest or Barbarian Gathering pretty well. This one is probably the most popular one because most people do not like training agility. And the other one is Forger. So this one lets you train Herblore for free effectively. It's the best relic for fast Herblore. So if you hate training Herblore or you just want like super early potions, this one's for you. The last one is Woodsman in this tier. It lets you auto process your entire inventory logs when you do fletching, so it's really good for that skill. It also is super good for Hunter because you can't fail it, and you also get extra rewards from Hunter like double chins and things like that. Woodsman seems to be quite a lot weaker than the other two because Firemaking, Hunter, and Fletching are usually the fastest and some of the easiest skills to train. Now it's tier 3 relics. It's all about teleport relics. So Evil Eye teleports you to bosses, and some of the bosses are right next to the bank, so it also acts as like an insta bank. I think this one's definitely going to be the best one of the three. Map of Alacrity teleports you to Jody shortcuts, but that seems kind of underwhelming. You also have Bank Heist, which teleports you to any bank in your region. I think Bank Heist might be better than Evil Eye for people that just want a skill and not boss, and maybe do clues only, but I think most people definitely pick Evil Eye. Next are tier 4 relics. The first one is Transmutation. This is a really unique one because it lets you upgrade or downgrade certain types of resources. There's a ton of things that you can use this for in terms of skilling. It's like jack of all trades, master of none. Effectively, it's not as good as some of the relics that focuses strictly on like 1 or 2 skills. This can cover like 5-6 different skills. Here's a screenshot to show you all the things that you can do. So if you really want to know, you can pause. But some of the notable things are like you can transmute herbs, right, to higher tiers, and you can transmute bones to higher tiers, so you can train prayer. You can also transmute hides for crafting. The next relic is Conniving Clue. So this basically is the clue relic of this league. It effectively just allows you to do clues super efficiently. You also get way more unique. So this one is insanely good for points because you get a ton of points for doing clues. You also get a ton of points for completing collection logs. And clues is basically the easiest way to get collection logs. So if you want to go for a lot of points or get points fast, this is the relic to pick. And the other one is Butler's Bell. Basically, it's like Kingdom of Miscellanea because it just lets you generate resources that you want. And you can also log out afterwards, and then you get the resources even though you're not playing the game. You can also let the butler process the resources for you and get a bit of XP as well. So this one actually helps you directly train your skills too. So I will only pick this one if you are incredibly busy during this time of leagues, but you still want to try to get like levels and stuff for leagues progression. So now we get into tier 5 relics, which is mostly skilling related. So the first one is Nature's Accord. So this one is going to be the farming and I guess indirectly the Herblore one. Not nearly as good as Friendly Forager for Herblore, but Nature's Accord gives you 10 as farm yields and you can plant whatever you want without a level requirement. And it gives you Fair Rings and Spirit Trees and Tool Leprechaun Tellies too. So this one's definitely really good if you decided not to pick Nature's Accord. The next one is Larceny. So this one is super easy AFK thieving. You get a ton of GP, ton of clues because you get them at even higher rates. Definitely going to work really well with things like Kandarin region and like Terran region, Elf region. If you do pick this for Terran, for example, you can thieve elves, which will also train smithing and crafting with the shards that you get. And the next one is Soul Harvest. This one is the solve for rune crafting and prayer. Mostly rune crafting. Rune crafting I think is going to be extra challenging this league because we don't have Banker's Note. So even if you have Noted Pearsons, without Banker's Note, rune crafting is going to be hella slow. So effectively, while you're skilling, like doing gathering stuff, right, like farming, fishing, you will get these like resources that you can use to turn into your XP, or you can just use that on an altar for rune crafting XP. I would say Soul Harvest is probably going to be one of the best ones to pick if you're not really sure what to pick. So the next tier is tier 6. This one is Combat Assists. So we have Culling Spree. This is the Slayer relic of this league. So for people that love Slayer stuff, this is going to be for you. If you're trying to go for like the Imbue Heart for, I guess, a regular Power Staff build, you probably want to get this one. Or if you just like the Slayer Helm effect a lot, right? You want this one too. But yeah, this one is pretty much the same as previous Slayer related relics with some slight differences. And the other relic is Grimoire. So we pretty much had this one before. So this one is almost the same. You unlock all the prayer books. You unlock all the spell books. So if you don't pick things like Zaya, then you can get like Rigor Augury. If you don't pick like Desert, you can still get like Ancient Magics. The other tier 6 relic is Eternal Sustenance. When you eat normal food like sharks, it will not deplete. So it's basically infinite food without the prayer infinite potions like the other one from previously. So it's a bit underwhelming, but it could work really well for beginners or people doing like really simple Thorn builds that don't want to try to use the water spell to heal. Now we have tier 7 relic. It's kind of like miscellaneous. So Reloaded is one of the tier 7 relics. It works pretty much the same as before. It lets you choose a relic that you didn't pick from a previous tier. This should be quite popular because as you reach this point in your build, you're going to realize there's maybe a skill or two that you don't have a solve for, so you can use Reloaded to pick a relic that would solve it, right? For example, if you didn't pick something that would help you with Herblore, you can always pick something like Friendly Forager to solve it. So the next relic is Flow State. So this one's very unique. Any skilling action basically is 2 ticks now instead of whatever it was before if it was slower than 2. So for example, if you were mining something, it's normally 3 ticks, so it becomes 2 ticks. Now, I don't know if that means like mining rune ore is instantly done in 2 ticks. Chat can confirm that for me. Flow State is kind of like Jack of all trades, master of none situation, like Transmute. In my experience, I think a relic that specializes more on like 1 or 2 skills tends to be a bit more useful for most players. Now we're on to tier 8 relics, which is the Combat Assist. So you have this thing called Minion, which is basically insane thralls like the Guardian from last league. So the Minion relic is incredibly good for damage, and it's quite easy to use because you just press it and then it's just on for 30 minutes. So this one is definitely the pick for people that don't want to have to min-max and like pay attention to too much extra clicks. It also picks up coins for you, so that's really nice. So the next relic is called the Flask of Fervor. So if you drink it, it'll restore your HP, prayer, and spec back to full. So it's like a nice oh shit button. That feature is really good for like beginner players. If you're panicking and you know you're gonna die, you can save yourself. It has a 3-minute cooldown, but you can reduce the cooldown by just simply doing damage during the cooldown. So for some players, it might just be only like a minute and a half cooldown. The flask also does AoE damage, so it's super versatile. There's actually one other tier 8 relic, but because I'm releasing this video before it's getting announced, I won't know what it is, but I'm just gonna say that tier 8 so far seems incredibly preferred, so really just pick the one that you like the most. It's now time to cover the Echo items. They are League's exclusive gear that drops from Echo bosses, which are harder versions of existing bosses. They are more powerful than even most endgame gear in the main game. Each region will have its own Echo boss, just like last time, but a lot of the rewards will be different, and some of the Echo bosses will be different too. The first region we're going to talk about is Volamore, since everybody has that. So the Echo boss is the Amoxicillado boss, which drops the Echo Tech Cocktail. It's basically the 3 double hitting melee weapons from the Nagro monsters combined, and it has more strength. This one is available for everybody, so it's definitely worth getting. It'll be a very good midpoint melee weapon for starting out. This Echo weapon won't be too strong since it's basically the starter weapon, but everything else after this will be a lot better. Let's talk about the Arscarnia region. So from Echo Cerberus, you can get the Fang of the Hound dagger. This dagger is not super strong physically if you're just focusing on a melee build, because its damage scales a lot better with magic perks from the combat masteries, magic gear like magic percent, and the enemy's elemental weakness. This item will work great though with builds that combo melee and elemental magic styles. Next we have Kandarin. So the Kandarin region has the Echo Smoke Devil again. This time it drops the Devil's Element and the Shadow Flame Quadrant Elemental Staff. So the Devil's Element will give you an extra 30% more damage and accuracy to any enemy. Shadow Flame Quadrant is the Twin Flame Staff, but on steroids. I would argue it's a must-have for any elemental magic build, as it's basically the best weapon for any elemental builds because of the extra damage. One of the craziest passives is that whatever style you're using for elemental spells, the enemy will basically become weak to it. So even if you're using the air style build, but it's weak to earth, the enemy will basically be weak to air instead. It's crazy. Now let's talk about Zaya. Zaya has the Echo History once again, but this time it drops a short bow called the Nature's Recurve. It is basically a stronger magic short bow, but it has the passive of being able to heal you. This will combo really well if you're going for like a bow build, because when you have a twisted bow, it's only going to be better on things with super high magic. So on things with low magic, this bow should do better. Next is Freemanik. So Freemanik has the Echo Dagonoth Kings again, which drops the Fee Helm. Basically, it's a Slayer Helm on steroids, and it also has really good Tribrid stats. It has a 5% chance to make any incoming hit that will hit you a 1 into a 0. This item will synergize decently well with some tank Thorn builds. Now let's talk about the Wilderness. The Wilderness has the Echo KBD once again, but this time it drops this crossbow called the King's Barrage. This is most likely the strongest crossbow for any crossbow build. This crossbow synergizes very well with any of the water spell perks, as you can do more damage with the best water spell perk. It fires 2 attacks, and the second one counts as a barrage attack, hence the water spell synergy. The water spell synergy will also heal you. Definitely a recommendation if you want to main a crossbow build. I will elaborate more on the actual build section. In Mauritania region, we have the Lictic Scepter Power Staff from the Echo Grotesque Guardians. This staff will be mostly used for a special attack. Every time you attack, you build stacks that can be used to activate the special attack, costing 5 stacks that deal a ton of damage, and it can hit up to 12 mobs. So this is kind of like Ice Barrage, you know, for Slayer, for example. So the special is really good and versatile. For players that are interested in more of the power staff builds, there are perks that will make the power staffs faster, even down to 1 tick. For the desert region, the Echo Cavalry Queen makes another return, and again it drops the Draugr Blowpipe. There are no perks, as far as I know, that can bring it down to 1 tick speed, so I feel like it's going to be losing a lot of power. It does have 2 accuracy rolls like the Fang, and it will give you the highest attack of the 2 rolls. This time, however, the Echo Blowpipe will be able to burn enemies, so that might make up for the lack of one-tick attack in terms of mobbing situations. This weapon will go well if you decide to do any of the thrown weapons build, since Blowpipe is a thrown weapon, as the mobbing with the AoE burning will allow you to trigger more damage. And finally, there's the Terran region, which has the Crystal Blessing, once again from the Echo Hunlith. Just like the original Echo Blessing, this will give you 15% damage and 30% accuracy when you are wearing full crystal armor to melee. This effect also applies to powered staves like Shadow Trident, so it's really good for people that want to do that kind of build instead of elemental magic build. And this time though, you also get an extra 2% magic damage per piece of crystal worn and 20 magic attack per piece as well. It is time to talk about the Demonic Pacts. This is a very important part of this league. It is like combat mastery from last league, but with way more options and is less linear than before. I super recommend this website, link in the description, as this new combat mastery is very complicated without a visual planner. So there's over 100 plus unlocks that you can choose from, but you do have a point limit of 40. The first 20 to 30 points will be very doable for a lot of players because the challenges that you do to get them is not going to be super hard. But if you want to get all 40, that's going to be like, endgame players kind of territory. Demonic Pacts go beyond just 3 styles of combat. For example, there are perks specifically for bows, crossbows, and thrown weapons for range. There's heavy and light weapons for melee. There's perks for different elemental spells and even perks for power staff like tridents. You can create various hybrid builds with different weapon types. For example, you can be a hybrid heavy weapon warrior and a crossbow ranger, or you can hybrid as a bow ranger and an air spell major. Hybrid builds can be more fun for some players that want more variety and will probably be stronger than single style builds in places where multi-styles are used, like TOA and chambers. There's even tank builds using this thing called the Thorns perks, where you do damage to enemies if they attack you. Some perks are so unique to this league, such as the regeneration perks, which lets you regenerate ammo and runes. There's perks that will activate when regeneration happens. You'll hear me say these perks often in the builds. How does one even begin to route the Demonic Pacts? For most players, I think you should decide on one core weapon style first, before you worry about branching into another weapon style. Once your weapon style is mostly maxed out in the perks that you want, you can focus on a second style if you wish to play longer and you get like 20-30 points. What weapon style you focus on should be based on your preferences. For example, whatever gets you most excited. What style have you played the least, or what style works best to start off based on your region? Rather than me just saying pick a heavy melee hybrid build, go with your gut and experiences. Another amazing feature is that if you are not enjoying your current style or build, you can actually reset your entire Demonic Pacts up to 3 times once you kill 3 echo bosses. So you can actually plan quite a bit around that. Which leads me to my next big tip. You definitely want to plan your builds in milestones like 10 points, 20 points, and so on. This lets you tackle early game more effectively, and you have the option to reset to something else later. For example, people going magic build might find it a bit more challenging to start off with mage, so you can build an easy melee build to deal with the early game and then reset when you actually have better magic setup, like when you get to moons. So we're about to get to the build, but I really hope you guys know at least the basics of the relics, the demonic packs, and the echo items, because if you don't, you should definitely watch the first half of this video, because it's gonna make explaining these builds a lot easier to understand and actually will help you in the long run. We're going to be covering the melee styles first. They predominantly utilize the blind bag perks. This build overall utilizes heavy weapons for additional damage with the blind bag perk. The blind bag effect works by allowing you to proc and auto attack with heavy melee weapons from your inventory against enemies like echo hits from last league. The higher the strength bonus though of your heavy weapons, the better for blind bag. Blind bag's power is maximized at 5 unique heavy weapons. It will randomly choose those 5 in your inventory. Mauritania is the star region for the melee builds using blind bag because of the Nox Halley, the Darok set, and the Scythe. One of these specific builds with blind bag is the Nox Halley, aka the Bluetooth build, requiring Mauritania. This build lets you attack with the Halley from 7 tiles distance and also any other Halley, and further distance using a perk will grant it more damage. So there's a perk where all heavy weapons will get an extended range, making Halleys 4 tiles, and then there's another perk where if the melee weapon has 4 tile range, it becomes 7 tiles. So if you don't feel like doing the Nox Halley build, you can also just go for the Scythe blind bag build, with the Scythe being the auto weapon. The advantage to this build is that you can still do a blind bag build but not requiring Mauritania. However, you will still need at least Desert or Zaya because you have to get the Scythe from a raid. Another advantage is that you no longer need to put points to max out the Halley route, so you can put the points on something else. The second region I recommend for the blind bag build is Arscarnia because it is very easy and quick relative to other options to get the 4 or 5 heavy weapons that you will be using for the proc effect. There's 4 unique god swords that you can get relatively quick, which will work perfect with blind bag with its high strength. Some other options for blind bag heavy weapons is going to be back to Mauritania for more experienced and committed players, because you can get ornament kits from hard mode top, which allows you to get the sanguine and holy sites, making them count as unique items, so you can proc technically multiple sites in your inventory. And you can also do uncharged versions of them too, so then you can have 5 different unique ID sites. Also in Mauritania, you can try to grind for full Darox, because if you wear full Darox and you get 4 extra Darok axes for the blind bag, and making sure that they're different repair states, so like 25%, 50%, and so on, it actually makes them count as unique items as well. The blind bag proc should work with full Darok's low HP effect if you're wearing the armor. It would probably take a while though to set up, but super new friendly versus grinding sites. If you're a casual player, I definitely recommend going for the God Swords for blind bag or Darok Axis for blind bag. For the third region, there's a few good candidates, like Kandarin region, for example, is pretty good for Piety if you're not going to take Grimoire Relic. This region also allows you to get super OP magic gear if you want to use magic as your secondary style. Terran is also a good third option because you get the Crystal Halberd, which will complement your Halley build. And the Halley will become 5 ticks instead of 7 this time because of a perk. Also, you get the Blessing from Echo Hunlif, which will boost your attack accuracy and strength damage for melee, and also helps with hybrid builds too. There's also a good third region, I would say, especially for people trying to grind multiple sites for the blind bag, because Chambers is now the best way to get the Mega Rare Scrolls, because they reduce the prayer scroll weightings, and it's also really good against Chambers, the blind bag build. Now I'm going to talk about the magical builds, mostly in the elemental spell section, all 4 types. I won't be covering the power staffs too much because in previous leagues we always use things like shadows and tridents, so I feel like most people already know about that, but there are viable builds, especially with the Echo Blessing, as I've mentioned. For all elemental spell builds, and honestly just any magic build in general, Kandarin is definitely going to be the main region because of the occult necklace drop, the tormented bracelet drop, and the echo items from Echo Thermi, especially the echo items. The Devil's Element and the Echo Staff from Thermi are absolutely insane for elemental spell damage. So the first build in the elemental series is going to be the water spell build because it is the safest build, so it'll be super new friendly, and it's also insane support for hybrid builds because of its healing ability. The endpoint water spell perk heals 60% of what you hit with water spells. If you are max HP, you will do 20% more damage. Combined with this overheal perk, you'll be able to keep your HP higher than 99. There's also a perk that lets you convert ice spells into water spells, which will get the benefits of all these perks that I just mentioned, so you can also freeze too as well. The next build is the air spell build, which is the strongest damage out of all 4 of the elemental spells, and arguably one of the strongest DPS builds out of the entire league. Specifically, air spell build has perks that allows you to get boosted damage based on how many prayers are active, so you can get 7% more damage per prayer activated. There's also a perk that allows you to convert your prayer bonus into higher chance to hit your max hit, which is actually incredible because if you have enough prayer bonus, then you can really improve your chance to hit for a max really often. There's also a regen perk where if you regen air runes, it will also give you some prayer bank, which is really good since you're going to be activating like 7 to 8 different prayers for the insane damage boost. This pairs really well with things like the water spell build, because if you need a heal, you can just switch to water spells real quick for some heals. Now we're talking about the earth build. So some of the perks for earth build is that you will hit harder based on your defense level being higher. You get 1 extra flat damage for every 12 defense levels. There are perks that permanently raise your defense level, so you'll definitely want to pick those so that your natural defense is higher. Earth builds might combo really well with Thorn builds since you are going to be raising your defense quite high, and that means you'll get more tankiness. And with the Thorn build, you definitely want to be tanky, so that way you can take a lot of different attacks from multiple enemies and not die. I would say the Earth spell build is pretty niche though compared to water and air. I'm going to talk about the Thorn builds next, which is kind of like a mix of everything. And this type of build is super unique gameplay and can be noob friendly. It is a defensive style gameplay where the more things hit you, assuming you can survive it, the more enemies will take from the Thorn damage. It is noob friendly in the sense that even if you are panicking and not clicking on the enemies because you're just busy eating and stuff, they will still eventually die due to the Thorn damage. The overall heal perk in addition lets you heal up to like 160 or something like that for increased survivability. Another important thing is that you do need a proper shield worn in order for Thorns to work, so that is a must-have. For most variations of Thorn builds, you definitely want to consider the water spell route for the immense healing, or tier a relic for the Flask of Fervor for the oh shit I need a heal button. For any Thorn build, you definitely want to maximize all Thorn related perks because a lot of them will do extra damage and some of them will even heal you when a Thorn procs. So for the major region, I would consider Kandarin to be one of the best regions for Thorn builds because there's a Thorn perk that procs extra Thorns whenever a recoil effect happens, like the Ring of Suffering. The Ring of Suffering is definitely the best one for recoil procs. Another item that recoil procs is the Echo Boots from Coliseum, but the problem with that one is that it only can proc things from a nearby distance, whereas Suffering doesn't care. As long as you take damage from anywhere, it will proc extra Thorns. You can also consider Freemy or Grimoire so you can unlock the Vengeance spell for Lunars, because that also works for the extra Thorn damage, but you can only use that once every like minute though. Now let's talk about the variations of Thorn builds itself. So let's talk about the Thin's Thorn tank build. Zaya is a must-have because it's the only way to get the Thin's Bulwark. So the Thin's Bulwark is a shield and a weapon at the same time. The Thin's damage scales based on how much melee defense you have on top of your normal strength bonus. So you want to pair this with super high defensive gear. Choosing Mauritania for full Justiciar gives Thin's the best power. As I mentioned earlier, all Thorn builds will definitely benefit a lot from the Kandarin for like Ring of Suffering, but this time you get the Piety for your Thins to be even stronger. So this build will be super cozy even if you're bad with prayers. Its main weakness is magic attacks, so pray Mage in multi-combat situations since the Dins and Justiciar does not reduce magic damage. Dins has a tank only mode by putting on defensive, which will also soak more melee and range damage if you're feeling overwhelmed. It has an area special attack which is good for Slayer and things like Inferno and Coliseum. Optionally, you can pick relics and perks that speed up your spec regen if you want to go for a more DPS route with the special attack. For melee Thorn builds, Vengeance is good for additional Thorn procs, but requires Freemy regen or Grimoire Relic, so that could be maybe your third region, but honestly, the third region is whatever you want. So there's definitely going to be many varieties of melee Thorn builds. You definitely don't need Dins to be able to pull off a pretty good melee Thorns build. For example, you can do things like Oathplay or Torva and then pair it with a shield because you do need a shield for the Thorns build. So like Dragonfire Shield and a one-handed weapon will work as well. Now we can talk about the magic Thorn builds. So Kandarin is definitely your core region because of the Occult Necklace, the Ring of Suffering, and the Quad Staff from Ectothermy. Zaya or Desert is a good secondary region because you can get yourself Ancestral, and Desert you can get yourself Ancient Magics if you don't pick Grimoire. The Devil's Element doesn't count as a proper shield, so it will not work with Thorns. You can just use like a melee shield though, I guess, and it'll probably be okay. If you don't like either of those regions, Freemy could be your last region for the Fees Helm. So The V Helm has a 5% chance to turn any incoming damage that was 1 or higher into 0, and it's very tanky and offensively strong and counts as Slayer Helm, so not a bad idea. Works better with Mage builds, I would say, because you're a bit more squishy. For the Magic Thorn builds, I definitely recommend having the Water Spell route maxed out because of the healing capabilities. The idea is that while you are tanking and taking damage and proccing Thorns, you can use the Water Spells to do even more damage on the enemies and heal yourself on top of that. Alright, it is time to talk about range related builds. So the range builds will mostly utilize echo hits from various echo hit related perks for additional damage. So we're going to cover the crossbow build. So this utilizes hard hitting crossbow to do guarantee max hit with one of the perks if landed successfully. Wilderness or Arscarnia are ideal picks for this build. This build is straightforward and casual friendly. Do keep in mind the 70% more damage but 2 tick slower perk won't actually be much better than regular crossbow speed due to how bad slower speed overkill is versus faster speed. So picking that perk is quite optional, especially if you want to go for bow perks. You can easily avoid that one. So let's assume you pick Wilderness as like your main region because it is a really good region because of the new Echo Crossbow from KBD, which apparently works with Water Rune Regen perk to heal yourself because it fires 2 hits and the second one counts as casting Ice Barrage. So this crossbow is most likely the strongest DPS crossbow when combined with the Water Spell build perk, especially because it gives you extra damage. So what I mean by that is there is a perk that turns ice spells into water spells, and there's a perk that gives water spells 20% more damage if you're max HP, and there's a perk that will also heal you as well because the crossbow's second hit counts as a water spell. But if you really don't like the Wilderness, you can also go Arscarnia route because Arscarnia gives you 40 range for max damage gear, and you get Armadillo crossbow, which is pretty easy to get to start off your crossbow build. And then you can actually go and camp next if that's like a boss you want to do for Zarya crossbow, which has awesome spec capabilities and does a lot of damage with things like ruby bolts. Arscarnia arguably has better range of content than Wilderness, at least in my opinion, so that's definitely also a good choice. For the secondary region, I would say Zeah is a good consideration because it gives you the Twisted Bugler BIS range shield. You also get the Rigor Prayer from Cox, which is best in slot prayer, and you can also get yourself a Twisted Bow. Alright, we'll talk about Thorn build one more time because it's just so fun. But anyways, we have the Thorn crossbow build. This complements it really well because crossbows uses range shields, so it's perfect. Ideally, you focus on building up your crossbow perks and then you branch into the Thorn perks. So this build might be one style Andy, but it's okay because even if your range is not that good on whatever it is you're fighting, you at least have Thorns to kind of like brute force something to death. But I definitely recommend adding in Kenderin for this build as your third region because something like the Ring of Suffering would make the Thorns perk even better since it will proc more Thorns based on the Suffering recoils. As it is a Thorn spell, definitely recommend putting points in overheal perks so that your HP can be super high. With the King's Barrage crossbow from Echo KBD, you can combine it with the Water Tree so that way you can heal a bunch while you're tanking with just the crossbow. So the next build in the range series is the melee range hybrid build. There's also a melee perk where two-handed weapons can proc echo range hits, and a crossbow perk where echo range hits are 15% more common. So combining those two perks means you can proc range echo hits 20% of the time when you are meleeing with a heavy weapon that is two-handed. It could synergize well with any blind bag melee builds as well. Most hybrid crossbow melee builds I recommend Mauritania for the melees, Arscarnia or Wilderness for the crossbows, and Zeah as a third pick. Let's finally talk about a bow build, but it's a hybrid bow build. So this is pretty beginner friendly and decently strong build that allows you to keep your HP very high and take advantage of the range berserk perk that I just explained before. You don't have to be low HP, you could also just be super high HP. Because of the overheal perk, if you choose it, you can get your HP up to like 160, maybe even like 190 or something. With the Zeah region as your core region, this allows you to use the Hisbori Echo Bow as your easy to access endgame bow. And eventually you could also get a twisted bow too from chambers. To maintain high HP, you'll have the hybrid mage with water spell route. I highly recommend Kandarin being your second region pick because of how much better it makes your water spell route for healing. So the water spell route, you've heard me say it so many times, lets you heal a ton when you use water spells. So you can keep your HP super high and get the berserk benefit for your range. And that is beautiful because, yeah, if you want to just be comfy and not die and still do decent damage, this build is pretty good. So while crossbows can get slower, you can at least make your bows faster because there's a perk that will make all bows 1 take faster. So Explorer bow is 2 takes with it, and stuff like T-bow becomes 4 takes, so a lot better. So the third region could be honestly whatever you prefer, but I would say Arscania is a good shout for the Void range for the damage boost, or Desert for another raid which also gets you Missouri similar to Void range. Alright guys, I think that's enough of talking about builds for me personally. There is definitely way more combos and builds, but I think I've covered enough to help you guys make decisions. Feel free to take these ideas and use them to create your own builds, or start with one of these. Feel free to post your own build ideas in the comments if I didn't mention them. Leave me a like if you enjoyed the video or found it informative. I worked a lot on this, ton of research. But anyways, I'm super excited for this league personally, so I hope to see some of you guys playing leagues this Wednesday.